I couldn't sleep. The baby kept moving, gentle flutters against my belly, as if he sensed something I couldn't name. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, trying to convince myself I was just overthinking. But a strange ache settled in my chest. Not physical, not from pregnancy. Something colder. Without really thinking, I reached over to Daniel's side of the bed and picked up his tablet. I told myself it was harmless. But deep down, I already knew I was about to lose something I wasn't ready to let go of. I didn't have to dig. The messages were right there, like he didn't even care if I found them. Dozens of them. Her name, their plans, their pictures, little heart emojis, goodnight kisses, dates. I felt this sharp heat rise in my throat, but I didn't cry. I just kept scrolling, reading every detail of how he started seeing her just weeks after I told him I was pregnant. Every word from him felt like a slow unraveling, like I was watching the future I'd built fall apart in real time. When morning came, I asked him. No accusations, no yelling. I just asked. He looked at me, not shocked, not sorry, and said, "You've changed. You're boring now. I need to feel alive." That was it. That was all he gave me. No guilt, no fight, just a verdict, like I'd already been dismissed. I went to the bedroom, packed a small bag, and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I left everything, except the one thing he couldn't take from me. The morning air hit different when you're walking away from everything you thought was permanent. I didn't know where I was going exactly, just that I couldn't stay. I hailed a cab, one hand on my belly, the other gripping that small overnight bag like it held my entire life. The driver didn't ask questions. Thank God. I wouldn't have had the words. Every block we passed felt like peeling off another layer of who I used to be. I kept telling myself, just breathe, just keep going. I checked into a cheap hotel near the hospital. Nothing fancy, chipped paint, flickering hallway lights, a bed that squeaked with every breath. But it was mine. For the first time in months, I didn't feel watched or judged or quietly resented. I curled up on that scratchy blanket and let the tears come. Not the loud kind. The kind that slipped down quietly without asking for permission. My baby kicked again. And somehow, that one small movement reminded me I wasn't alone. By sunrise, something shifted. I sat by the window, watching the world stretch into a new day, and I made a quiet vow. I would not let his betrayal shape the way my son entered this world. I'd carry the pain, yes, but I'd also carry the strength to rise from it. I wasn't just leaving a man, I was leaving a legacy of silence, of settling, of not being enough. And maybe I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. This child, he'd be born into love, not lies. I didn't tell anyone right away, not even Lena. I needed to sit with it first, the heartbreak, the silence, the realization that love can rot from the inside without you even noticing. I replayed his words over and over again. You've changed. As if carrying his child had turned me into someone disposable. And maybe I had changed. Maybe that was the point. I wasn't the girl who begged to be chosen anymore. I was the woman who chose herself, even when it hurt. Eventually, I called Lena. Just her voice on the line made my chest crack open. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "Where are you? I'm coming." And she did. She brought food, extra clothes, and that calm, no-nonsense energy I'd always leaned on. She didn't tell me it was going to be okay. She just sat with me in the mess of it. We ate takeout on the bed and watched stupid reality shows, and for a moment, I almost forgot the hollow space inside me. But every time I looked down at my belly, I remembered. And I knew this wasn't just about heartbreak. This was about legacy, about what kind of story I wanted my child to be born into. Not one where his father's name sat on his birth certificate like a stain I'd never quite scrub out. No. This was my body, my labor, my pain. And soon, my son. And though the world around me had cracked wide open, I was already starting to feel the shape of something new forming beneath the rubble. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. But it was mine. I signed the lease with a shaking hand and a belly that seemed to grow heavier by the hour. No one held the door open for me this time. No one called it our home. But there was something quietly powerful about that. For once, I wasn't waiting for someone to show up. I was the one doing the showing up. For me, and for the life growing inside me. I blocked Daniel's number the same day I moved in. No long message, no final goodbye, just a clean cut. He didn't deserve an explanation, not after the wreckage he left behind. But of course, that didn't stop him from trying. A couple days later, his name lit up on my screen. Unknown number, voicemail. I didn't even have to listen to know the tone. Not regret, not apology. Just entitlement, wrapped in a demand. Update me about my son. That one sentence boiled my blood. My son. He hadn't bought prenatal vitamins. He hadn't held my hair back when I was sick. He hadn't even asked if we were okay. But suddenly, he wanted ownership? Like this baby was a possession, a trophy with his name on it. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, holding the phone with one hand and my belly with the other. And I whispered it for the first time. Not to him, but to myself. He'll never own my child. Like he tried to own me. Lena came over almost every evening, arms full of groceries or folded laundry, acting like it was the most normal thing in the world. She never treated me like I was broken, just tired, just transitioning. That meant everything. She didn't tiptoe around the silence. She filled the space with laughter, sarcastic commentary, and stories that had nothing to do with pregnancy or men. And when I cried, she let me, without questions, without trying to fix it. Just there, solid. There were moments I thought I might break anyway. Like when I stood in the baby aisle, holding a tiny onesie, and realized I'd be the one assembling the crib, changing every diaper, wiping every tear, alone. But then I'd feel Lucas shift inside me, reminding me I wasn't really alone at all. He was with me, in every breath, every decision. That gave me strength I didn't even know I had. Not loud strength, quiet, steady, rooted strength. The kind that grows in hard soil. Some nights, I'd sit by the window and just listen to the city hum around me. I imagined what kind of mother I'd be, not perfect, but present, fiercely present. I thought about the kind of man I'd let into our lives, if ever. The bar was high now, higher than it had ever been, because this wasn't just about love anymore. This was about protection, legacy, freedom. And slowly, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was enough on my own. The days began to blend, prenatal appointments, long walks, late-night kicks that kept me up but oddly comforted me. I made a list on the fridge of names I liked, foods Lucas reacted to, songs that seemed to calm him. It became our little routine, our little world. I didn't have a partner beside me rubbing my back or making midnight tea, but I had something better. Peace, and I was learning to wear it like armor, soft but impenetrable where it mattered. Daniel kept trying, emails, messages through mutual friends. But not once did he say, "I'm sorry." Not once did he ask how I was doing. It was always about him, his rights, his name, his image of fatherhood, as if biology gave him automatic access. But I wasn't the same woman he betrayed. I was someone new, someone who saw clearly now. And every time he reached out, it only confirmed one thing. He wanted control, not connection. One night, I sat in the bathtub, warm water hugging my body, hands resting on my stomach. Lucas kicked, and I whispered, "You won't carry his name, you'll carry your own." Saying it out loud felt like breaking a spell. That's when the decision solidified. I would give this child a fresh start, a clean legacy, one not tangled in lies or manipulation. He would be born with his mother's love and her last name. And Daniel? He wouldn't even see it coming. Labor started quietly, almost like a whisper, a cramp here, a tightening there. I was alone in my apartment when it began, folding baby clothes I'd washed the night before. No drama, no panic. Just a sudden awareness. It was time. I grabbed the hospital bag I'd packed weeks ago, called Lena, and sat at the edge of the bed for a moment, breathing. This was it. The moment that had been slowly building through every tear, every choice, every ounce of strength. At the hospital, the nurses were kind. One of them rubbed my back between contractions, and for a fleeting second, I wished Daniel could see me like this, raw, powerful, bringing life into the world. But I shook the thought away. He didn't deserve this view. This wasn't his moment. This was mine. And when they finally placed my son on my chest, all slick and wailing and perfect, I wept. Not from pain, from power, from love, from the knowing that I had done it, without him. Hours later, with Lucas sleeping beside me and Lena curled up in the chair, the nurse brought in the paperwork. She handed me the birth certificate forms and smiled. "You can fill this out whenever you're ready." I stared at the line that said, "Father," then left it blank. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Then I got to the surname. My pen hovered, and then, with a strange calm, I wrote it. Lucas Martins, my name, my bloodline, my choice. The nurse glanced down at the form, then back up at me. "Are you sure?" she asked gently, like she was offering me one last chance to reconsider. I smiled, not wide, but certain. "Yes, he doesn't deserve to live on through my son's name." She nodded, no more questions. And just like that, it was official. Lucas Martins. The name felt right. Not borrowed, not tainted, not a reminder of broken promises. It was pure. Entirely his. Entirely ours. Later that night, while Lucas slept in the clear plastic bassinet by my side, I traced his tiny fingers with mine. He had his own identity now, free from Daniel's shadow, free from the weight of a man who chose absence over presence. I didn't feel guilty. I felt relieved. Because names are more than tradition. They're stories. And Lucas's story wouldn't begin with betrayal. It would begin with a woman who chose strength over submission. A woman who refused to pass down pain. Lena brought a little balloon that said, "Welcome, baby Lucas," and taped it to the foot of the hospital bed. We laughed at how crooked it looked, but in that crookedness, there was something beautiful, something real. It wasn't the family I once imagined, but it was a family nonetheless, built on truth, on healing, on love that doesn't demand, but gives. I looked down at my son, and I knew. This name, this moment, this quiet declaration, it would echo long after the pain faded. Back at home, everything felt different, not easier, but somehow lighter. I placed Lucas in the crib I'd assembled myself, slowly rocking him to sleep in the quiet warmth of our apartment. His name was on the little blanket draped over the side, Lucas Martins. I had it embroidered the week before, long before I even gave birth. I think deep down, I always knew I'd choose this path, that I'd cut that last thread tying us to Daniel's legacy and not look back. The official documents arrived 2 weeks later. Birth certificate, social security card, all listing the name I'd chosen. I held them in my hands like sacred proof. Not just of birth, but of decision. A line drawn, a statement made. Daniel had given me a child, yes. But I had given Lucas a future untouched by a man who couldn't see beyond himself. It wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting the script, for both of us. Some nights, I'd still hear my phone buzz with unknown numbers. I never answered. There was nothing left to explain. I had made my choice, and it was louder than any voicemail he could ever leave. My son would grow up without the confusion of carrying a name that belonged to betrayal. And while Daniel lived in the illusion of control, I lived in the quiet power of truth. And I knew, sooner or later, that truth would find its way to him. It was a Thursday. Cloudy. Ordinary. I had just finished feeding Lucas and was rocking him gently when there was a knock at the door, firm, familiar, unwelcome. I froze. The knock came again. I walked over slowly, heart pounding, and when I opened it, there he was. Daniel. Holding a bouquet of supermarket flowers like that could erase what he'd done. His face wore that same practiced smile, the one he used when he wanted something. "I just want to see my son," he said. I didn't move, didn't speak. Just looked at him, not with rage, not with sorrow, but with distance. The kind of distance built over sleepless nights, solo appointments, and the quiet strength of surviving without him. Still, I stepped aside. Not out of invitation, out of control. My control. He stepped in, scanning the apartment like he expected something more broken. He didn't see it. The softness, the safety, the peace he had no part in building. And yet, he reached for Lucas. I let him hold the baby. Briefly. Watched as his arms tensed, awkward, unsure. Like he was cradling a stranger's child, which in many ways he was. He looked up at me, trying to muster charm, some sliver of connection. "He looks like me," he said with a smirk. I didn't smile back. I took a slow breath and said the words I'd been holding like a blade. "Meet Lucas Martins, my son, not yours. You lost the right to this family the moment you betrayed it." His face cracked for the first time, not with guilt, but with anger. "You gave him your name?" he snapped, stepping closer, like proximity could intimidate me. "You had no right." The flowers were still clutched in his hand, now crumpled and useless. But I didn't flinch, not this time. I looked him straight in the eyes and replied, steady and unshaken, "Neither did you. You just never realized it." He blinked, stunned. He thought he could walk back in and rewrite history. But I had already rewritten the future. He threw his arms up, pacing. "You're bitter." "You're punishing me," he said, as if the story began when he got uncomfortable. I didn't argue. I just picked up Lucas from his bassinet and held him close. "This isn't punishment," I said calmly. "This is protection. From a man who left when it mattered most." His mouth opened like he had more to say, but the weight of the truth held him silent. He looked around, realizing he was no longer the center of anything. The apartment didn't feel small anymore. It felt full. Full of everything I'd built without him. He tried again, voice quieter this time. "He's still my son." I shook my head. "He's a child, not a claim. Biology doesn't make you a father. Being there does." That stung. I saw it in his jaw, in the way he shifted his weight. But I wasn't there to coddle his ego. I was there to make sure he knew, truly knew, that this life, this peace, he was only visiting it. He stayed for a few more minutes, trying to make small talk. Asking about feedings, sleep patterns, pediatrician visits, like he'd earned the right to those answers. I answered politely, but with measured distance. Every word from me was a reminder, this wasn't his home anymore. Lucas stirred in my arms, restless, and I used it as my cue. "It's time for his nap," I said, walking toward the hallway. When I looked back, Daniel was still standing there, as if trying to figure out how everything had slipped away. He set the flowers on the kitchen counter, almost embarrassed, and mumbled, "I'll be in touch." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I stood there in the silence, Lucas breathing softly against my chest. I could feel the echo of that visit hanging in the air, but not like a wound, more like a final chapter. I hadn't just survived him, I had outgrown him, and he finally knew it. That night, I rocked Lucas to sleep while humming the lullaby my mother used to sing to me. The apartment glowed in that warm, golden way it does when everything inside is calm. I whispered promises into his tiny ear, not about what he'd have, but about what he'd never lack. Never lack love, never lack truth, never carry someone else's shame. And as I laid him in his crib, I knew Daniel would come back again. But next time, I'd be even stronger. The weeks turned into months, and my world found a rhythm, gentle, messy, beautiful. Mornings started with baby giggles and lukewarm coffee. Nights ended with lullabies and quiet victories. I was still tired, still figuring things out. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was building something real, not just a home, but a life. Lucas grew fast, reaching for everything, laughing with his whole body. And every time he smiled, it felt like the universe was saying, "You chose right." I started an online business from the kitchen table, small at first. Handmade baby items, journals, pieces of the life I was living. Orders came slowly, then steadily. Each one felt like a tiny win, a reminder that I was capable of more than just survival. Lena cheered me on, showing up with snacks and moral support. We laughed about product names and shipping delays. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. And I was proud, not in a loud way, but in a soul-deep kind of way. Daniel tried to fight back, filed paperwork, claimed rights, rattled cages he thought would shake me. But the law saw through him, just like I had. He hadn't signed anything at birth, hadn't supported us, hadn't even tried to apologize. The court sided with me, permanently. When the judge ruled in my favor, I didn't cry. I just exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath since the moment I found those messages. The war was over, and my son, still mine. Fully, freely, fiercely mine. Lucas said his first word on a quiet Tuesday morning. "Mama," just like that, like it had always been waiting on his tongue. I froze, then laughed, then cried, all at once. No audience, no fanfare, just the two of us in the soft light of our little kitchen. And in that tiny, perfect moment, every sleepless night, every ache, every lonely step I had taken, it all folded into something whole. He chose me with that word, not by blood, by love. I found myself again, but in a new shape, not just mother, but woman, independent, steady. I learned how to ask for help without guilt, how to say no without apology. My body had changed, my priorities had shifted, and so had my soul. And I liked who I was becoming, strong in softness, brave in silence. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just living, freely, fully, in a life I built from the ashes. Every now and then, someone would ask about Lucas's father, at daycare, at the park. I'd just smile and say, "It's just us." And that was enough. I didn't owe anyone the story. I didn't owe Daniel my peace. I had reclaimed it, piece by piece, day by day. Through every bottle, every nap, every midnight rocking chair moment, I was writing a different legacy, one not born of fear, but of freedom. One not shaped by his name, but strengthened by mine. One Saturday afternoon, I sat on a bench at the park, watching Lucas chase bubbles with the kind of laughter that turns heads. Lena was beside me, sipping iced tea, her legs stretched out toward the sun. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Watching him run, so free, so joyful, was enough. His cheeks were flushed, his curls wild, his giggle untamed. No shadow followed him. No ghost of a name that didn't belong. Just Lucas. Just love. I snapped a photo. Not for social media, just for me. To remember what this day looked like. What healing felt like. There was no grand triumph. No dramatic final act. Just a life, rebuilt quietly, rooted in truth. That's the thing no one tells you. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes softly, in a breeze across your face while your child laughs in the distance. And in that softness, you realize you made it. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in gold and lavender, I held Lena's hand and smiled. He left me when I needed him most, I said, watching Lucas roll in the grass. But I gave my son something he never could, a name without shame. And in that single sentence, I closed the door on the past. Not with bitterness, with grace, with finality. Because the legacy we carry isn't just the one we're born into. It's the one we choose to create.
"We're reorganizing the territory," my boss explained, not meeting my eyes. "Your position is being eliminated." I sat across from Marcus Reed in his office at Veltrix Optics, staring at the termination letter he'd slid across his desk. The ink on the $2 million contract I'd just secured wasn't even dry yet. "I understand," I replied, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Cassandra Doyle, a 36-year-old senior sales executive in Plano, Texas, and I'd just been robbed of the biggest commission check of my career. For 8 months, I'd poured everything into landing this client, Horizon Innovations. I'd flown across the country 12 times, sat through 43 negotiation rounds, personalized countless pitch decks, and built a relationship with their CEO that went beyond business. And now, 2 weeks before my commission would pay out, Marcus had decided my position was redundant. As I packed my desk, I noticed my coworkers stealing glances at me, their expressions a mix of pity and relief that they weren't in my shoes. Marcus had timed this perfectly, right at 4 p.m. on a Friday when most executives had already left for weekend golf games. The office politics playbook at its finest. "I'm so sorry, Cassandra," whispered Violet from accounting as she passed by. "Everyone knows this isn't right." I smiled at her, maintaining my composure. "It's just business, right?" But it wasn't just business. It was personal. The Horizon deal wasn't just another client. It represented my career pinnacle after 15 years in the industry. That commission would have paid off my mother's medical bills from last year's unexpected surgery. Marcus knew all this. We'd discussed it over drinks just last month when he'd congratulated me on nearly closing the deal. I took one last look at the office where I'd spent 5 years of my life before walking out, head held high. In the elevator, I checked my phone and saw a text from Jonah Freeman, Horizon's CEO. "Dinner still on for Wednesday to celebrate the partnership?" A small smile formed on my lips. What Marcus didn't understand was that business wasn't just about contracts and numbers. It was about relationships. And my relationship with Jonah wasn't just professional. We'd built a foundation of mutual respect and trust over the past 8 months. He'd shared stories about his children. I'd talked about my dreams of starting my own consultancy someday. As I reached my car, I made a decision. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. For 5 years, I'd been one of Veltrix's top performers. I'd built my client roster from scratch, turning struggling accounts into gold mines. Last year alone, I'd brought in $4.3 million in new business. The sales plaques and achievement awards gathering dust in a box in my trunk were testament to that. But Veltrix had been changing. 3 months ago, Gregory Hansen took over as CEO, bringing Marcus Reed with him as the new vice president of sales. The whispers started immediately. They were restructuring to maximize shareholder value, corporate speak for cutting corners. I'd noticed the warning signs but dismissed them. The cancellation of the annual sales retreat. The new streamlined commission structure that somehow always calculated to less than before. The subtle pressure to hand over client relationships to the account management team. My closest colleague, Thomas, had warned me. "They're pushing out the old guard, Cass," he'd said over lunch. "Replacing experienced salespeople with fresh graduates they can pay half as much." I didn't believe it would happen to me. Not with my numbers. Not with the Horizon deal so close to closing. Growing up, my father always told me, in business, loyalty goes both ways. He'd worked 30 years at the same company, climbing from the mailroom to management. But that world was gone. Today's corporate landscape rewarded the ruthless, people like Marcus who viewed employees as expendable resources. As I drove home, I called my mother. I couldn't bring myself to tell her about being fired. Not yet. Not when I'd promised to help with her medical bills. "How's my superstar?" she asked cheerfully. "Just fine, Mom," I lied, forcing brightness into my voice. "How are you feeling today?" "Better than yesterday, worse than tomorrow," she quipped. It was her standard response since the surgery. After hanging up, I sat in my parked car, staring at my condominium building, trying to formulate a plan. My severance would cover expenses for 3 months, but without the commission, I'd need to dip into my savings for Mom's next payment. Unless... I scrolled through my contacts until I found Jonah's number. Our weekly dinner had become a tradition during the negotiation process. He valued authenticity. It was what had drawn Horizon to Veltrix in the first place. Or more accurately, to me. I hesitated for only a moment before pressing call. The line rang twice before Jonah's familiar voice answered. "Cassandra, I was just thinking about you. Still on for Wednesday?" "Absolutely," I replied. "But Jonah, there's something we need to discuss." Wednesday evening found me at La Cantera, an upscale restaurant in downtown Plano, where Jonah and I had celebrated the verbal agreement 2 weeks prior. I'd arrived early, selected a private corner table, and ordered a bottle of Jonah's favorite Cabernet. When he arrived, his smile faltered as he read my expression. "Something's wrong," he said, sitting down. I took a deep breath and laid out the facts. No emotional embellishments, no pleas for sympathy. Just the truth. I'd been terminated 2 weeks before my commission would have paid out on the deal I'd architected from initial contact to signed contract. "That's..." Jonah's face darkened. "That's contemptible. It's just business." I repeated the phrase that had become my bitter mantra. "No." Jonah set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "Business is about relationships and integrity. Without those, it's just theft wearing a suit." Coming from the CEO of a $500 million technology company, the words carried weight. "What will you do?" he asked. "I've received an offer from Crystalline Systems," I said, referring to one of Veltrix's main competitors. "They've been trying to recruit me for years." Jonah nodded slowly, his analytical mind working through the implications. "And our contract with Veltrix?" "Has a 14-day rescission clause," I said. "We reviewed it together, if you recall. Either party can withdraw without penalty within 2 weeks. I wasn't asking him to cancel. I would never explicitly ask that of him. The decision had to be his, based on his own business judgment. Jonah stared at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. "Harold," he said to his legal counsel, "pull the Veltrix contract. I want to invoke the rescission clause first thing tomorrow." He paused, listening. "Yes, I'm certain. And clear my morning schedule for a call with their leadership." After hanging up, he looked at me. This isn't just about your commission, Cassandra. During our negotiations, you promised that you personally would oversee the implementation. That was a material factor in our decision. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Crystalline's product line is actually better suited for your needs, I said truthfully. The optical components have a longer warranty, and their custom design team is more experienced with your specific applications. When can you start there? Jonah asked. Monday. They're eager to have me on board. Good. Jonah raised his glass. Then I look forward to hearing their proposal next week. As we finished dinner, discussing his daughter's college applications and my mother's improving health, I felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that in a world where loyalty was increasingly rare, integrity still mattered to some. By the time the check arrived, the first phase of my response to Marcus's betrayal was in motion. Not revenge. Correction. The following morning, my phone began ringing at 7 a.m. Marcus. I sent it to voicemail. He called again, and again. By the fourth call, I decided to answer. Cassandra, he sounded breathless, panicked. We need to talk. About what, Marcus? My position was eliminated, remember? I kept my voice pleasant, as if discussing the weather. Horizon just canceled their contract. Jonah Freeman personally called Gregory and pulled out of the deal. His voice tightened. Did you have anything to do with this? How could I? I don't work for Veltrix anymore. Listen. His tone shifted to conciliatory. There's been a misunderstanding. We want to bring you back. Same position, better compensation package. The territory reorganization has been postponed. I almost laughed at the transparency of it. That's a generous offer, Marcus, but I've already accepted a position with Crystalline Systems. I start Monday. The silence on the other end was deafening. Crystalline, you can't do that. Your non-compete doesn't apply when I've been terminated without cause. I finished for him. Page 4, paragraph 3 of my employment contract. I reviewed it with my attorney yesterday. Another long pause. What did you tell Freeman? The truth, that I was terminated shortly after securing his business. Damn it, Cassandra. The mask of professionalism slipped. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board is going ballistic. This was a cornerstone deal for the quarter. It sounds stressful, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm. I should let you go so you can handle that situation. Best of luck, Marcus. As I ended the call, I received a text from Violet. Office is chaos. Gregory called emergency meeting. Marcus looks like he's about to explode. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Crystalline's headquarters for an early meeting with their executive team. The gleaming glass building stood in stark contrast to Veltrix's aging office park. Inside, I was greeted by Eleanor Walsh, the CEO who had been courting me for years. Welcome to the team, Cassandra, she said, her handshake firm. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied, the words carrying more sincerity than when I'd said them to Marcus. Eleanor led me to a conference room where the executive team waited. Cassandra's joining us from Veltrix, she announced. And she's already creating waves. Horizon Innovations canceled their contract with Veltrix this morning. The executives exchanged glances. Now, Eleanor continued, we have a narrow window of opportunity here. Cassandra has a relationship with Horizon's CEO. We need to move quickly to present our solution before their procurement team looks at other options. I cleared my throat. I've tentatively scheduled a meeting with Jonah next Wednesday. He's expecting our proposal. Eleanor's smile widened. Perfect. Let's make sure it's irresistible. For the next 3 days, I worked with Crystalline's product team to create a custom package for Horizon. Unlike Veltrix's one-size-fits-all approach, we tailored every aspect to their specific needs. The pricing structure I proposed was actually lower than Veltrix's, with better terms and stronger guarantees. This could be a $2.5 million deal, noted the finance director after reviewing my numbers. With expansion potential to $4 million within 2 years, I added. By Monday afternoon, my phone had accumulated 8 voicemails from Marcus and 3 from Gregory, each more desperate than the last. The final one came just as I was leaving Crystaline's office. "Cassandra, this is Gregory Hansen. Whatever Crystaline is paying you, we'll beat it. Name your price. We need you back." I deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, weren't worth rebuilding. Wednesday arrived with unexpected tension. Despite my confidence in Crystaline's superior offering, years in sales had taught me that nothing was certain until contracts were signed. As our team prepared to leave for the meeting with Horizon, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Thomas. Used Violet's phone. Urgent. Marcus is meeting with Jonah right now, offering 30% discount plus free implementation." My stomach dropped. Marcus was making a desperate countermove. I showed the message to Eleanor. "Can we head over now?" I asked. "I think we may need to get ahead of this." Eleanor nodded grimly, and we left immediately. Upon arriving at Horizon's headquarters, the receptionist informed us that Jonah was in a meeting, but had left instructions to send us to conference room B when we arrived. Walking through the familiar hallways felt surreal, like returning to a place I'd only dreamed about. When we entered the conference room, I stopped short. Sitting at the table was not only Jonah but Marcus, looking smug, and Gregory, who seemed surprised by our entrance. "Cassandra," Jonah stood, smiling warmly. "Perfect timing. These gentlemen from Veltrix were just explaining why I should reconsider my cancellation." Marcus's expression shifted from confidence to discomfort as I introduced Eleanor and the Crystaline team. "We were under the impression we had an exclusive meeting," Gregory said, his tone clipped. "I invited both parties," Jonah replied evenly. "I believe in making informed decisions." What followed was the most unusual presentation of my career. Marcus outlined Veltrix's desperate concessions, price cuts, extended warranties, free training, while I presented Crystaline's thoughtful, customized solution. Throughout it all, Jonah watched, asking occasional questions but giving no indication of his preference. When both presentations concluded, Jonah thanked everyone. "This has been enlightening. I'll need to confer with my team before making a decision." Outside the building, Marcus cornered me in the parking lot. "You won't get away with this," he hissed. "You have no idea what you're up against." "I'm up against a man who fired me to avoid paying my commission," I replied calmly. "I think I understand the situation perfectly." His face reddened. "It wasn't personal. It was a business decision." "And this is my business decision," I gestured toward Horizon's building. "May the best solution win." Back at Crystaline, Eleanor was surprisingly upbeat. "You did well in there. Freeman was clearly more engaged during your presentation." "He's thorough," I cautioned. "He won't make a decision based on personalities." 2 agonizing days passed. Then, on Friday afternoon, my phone rang with Jonah's number. "We've made our decision," he said without preamble. "Can you come to my office at 4 p.m.? The drive to Horizon felt like traversing a minefield. Had Marcus's desperation tactics worked? Had the substantial price cut swayed Jonah's procurement team? When I arrived, I was escorted directly to Jonah's office. To my surprise, no one from Veltrix was present, just Jonah and his team. "Cassandra," he greeted me, "I want you to explain to our team exactly how Crystaline's optical sensors will integrate with our existing systems." For the next hour, I detailed the implementation process, answering technical questions from Horizon's engineers. When we finished, Jonah stood and extended his hand. "We'll go with Crystaline. The contract is being drawn up as we speak." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by professional composure. "You won't regret it. The product truly is superior." "I know," he said. But equally important is working with people of integrity. 1 month later, I sat in my new corner office at Crystalline, reviewing the finalized contract with Horizon. The deal had indeed come in at $2.5 million, with a clear path to expansion. My commission would be considerably larger than what I would have earned at Veltrix, with a more favorable payment structure. Violet had texted me updates in the aftermath. Marcus had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into his management practices. 3 other sales executives had resigned in solidarity with my situation. Veltrix's stock had dropped 11% following the loss of the Horizon deal and subsequent departures. But the most satisfying development came that morning in the form of an email from Harold, Horizon's legal counsel. He'd forwarded me an internal message from Jonah to his executive team. Our decision to partner with Crystalline over Veltrix wasn't just about pricing or product specifications. It was about aligning ourselves with a company that demonstrates the values we espouse. When Veltrix terminated Ms. Doyle immediately after she secured our business, explicitly to avoid paying her commission, they revealed their true corporate character. Such short-sighted greed doesn't align with our long-term partnership goals. Crystalline, by contrast, recognized talent and integrity and moved decisively to acquire it. That's the kind of business instinct we respect. I printed the email and pinned it to my wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what truly mattered in business. Eleanor stopped by my office that afternoon. I just got off the phone with Bedford Industries. Apparently, their procurement officer heard about how we acquired the Horizon contract and wants to discuss moving their business to us. I raised an eyebrow. Bedford. They've been with Veltrix for years. 7 years, she confirmed, worth about $1.8 million annually. They're concerned about stability and leadership over there. Word was spreading. What Marcus had done to me wasn't just an isolated incident of corporate callousness. It was becoming a cautionary tale in our industry. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, my assistant forwarded a voicemail from Gregory Hansen. "Cassandra, this is Gregory. I want you to know that Marcus Reed no longer works at Veltrix. His actions were not authorized by me or the board. We'd still like to discuss your potential return. Please call me." I deleted the message without a second thought. My new office had a view of the downtown skyline. My team was skilled and motivated. My compensation package included equity in a growing company that valued relationships over quarterly numbers. More importantly, I'd received a call from my mother's doctor that morning. The latest tests showed significant improvement. With my new financial situation, I'd been able to move her to a better specialist, one not covered by her insurance. As I drove home, I reflected on the past 5 weeks. I hadn't sought revenge when Marcus betrayed me. I'd simply ensured that consequences found him through his own actions. I hadn't torn down Veltrix. They'd undermined themselves by prioritizing short-term gains over sustainable relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonah. "Implementation team says everything's ahead of schedule. Dinner next week to celebrate?" "Absolutely," I replied. "First round's on me." My father's words about loyalty going both ways echoed in my mind. While the corporate world had changed since his time, some principles remained eternal: integrity, relationships, and the understanding that how you treated people always came back to you in the end. Marcus had taught me a valuable lesson, though not the one he intended. In business, as in life, your reputation wasn't built on what you said, but on what you did, especially when you thought no one was watching. 6 months after joining Crystalline, I stood at a podium accepting the Sales Executive of the Year award at the annual industry conference. Looking out at the audience, I spotted several familiar faces from Veltrix, including Gregory, who offered a tight smile when our eyes met. My acceptance speech was brief and focused on the importance of business ethics and relationship building. I didn't mention Veltrix or the circumstances that led to my departure. I didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew the story. Success in sales isn't just about closing deals, I concluded. It's about creating true partnerships where both sides win. When we forget that, we're no longer sales professionals. We're just transaction processors. The applause was gratifying, but what happened afterward was even more so. A steady stream of industry colleagues approached me, some to offer congratulations, others seeking advice, and a few, quietly, inquiring about opportunities at Crystalline. Bedford Industries had indeed moved their business to us, followed by 2 other major Veltrix clients. Our company's market share had grown 15%, while Veltrix's had declined by almost 20%. Jonah found me at the reception afterward. "Congratulations," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "Well deserved." "Thank you for taking a chance on Crystalline," I replied. "How's the implementation going?" "Ahead of schedule and under budget," he said. "Your team is exceptional." "They are," I agreed. "And so is yours." We chatted briefly about future projects before he was called away by another associate. As I watched him leave, Eleanor approached. "Have you seen this?" she asked, showing me her tablet. The headline read, "Veltrix Optics announces layoffs amid continuing market struggles." The article mentioned that Gregory Hansen had stepped down as CEO, replaced by the board chairman as interim leadership. I felt no joy at the news, only a sense of inevitability. The autumn wind scattered leaves across the sidewalk as I approached the care facility where my mother now lived. Thanks to my improved financial situation, she had a private room in the best rehabilitation center in Plano, with daily physical therapy and cutting-edge treatments. "There's my girl," she beamed as I entered, setting aside the book she'd been reading. At 68, she still had the sharp wit and warm smile that had guided me through life's challenges. "How's the new medication working?" I asked, taking the chair beside her bed. "The doctor says I'm responding better than expected," she replied. "I might be able to move back to my own place by Christmas." "That's wonderful, Mom." "And how's my corporate warrior doing? Still conquering the business world?" I smiled, updating her on recent developments. I'd been promoted to Vice President of Strategic Accounts at Crystalline, with a team of 12 sales executives reporting to me. The Horizon implementation had been so successful that they'd expanded the contract to include 2 additional divisions, bringing the total value to $3.8 million. "You know what your father would say about all this," she said, a wistful look crossing her face. "Success is best when it's earned honestly," I quoted. She nodded. "He would be so proud of you, Cassandra. Not just for your achievements, but for how you've achieved them." After leaving the facility, I drove to a local coffee shop where I'd agreed to meet Thomas. He'd left Veltrix the previous month and had been interviewing with several companies. "I've got good news," he said as soon as I sat down. "I accepted an offer from Meridian Technologies." "Congratulations. Sales position?" "Sales director," he replied, unable to contain his grin. 15% higher base than Veltrix, better commission structure. "They're lucky to have you," I said sincerely. "I almost called Marcus to thank him," Thomas joked. "Being associated with Veltrix these days is like having a golden ticket to the competition." As I built my new team and career at Crystalline, I occasionally thought about Marcus and the lesson he had inadvertently taught me. In the end, how we treat others determines not just their fate, but our own. My revenge wasn't in destroying him. It was in succeeding despite his attempt to devalue my contribution. The greatest vindication wasn't watching his downfall, but creating my own ascent.